Which city are you not going to visit ever again and why? Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy. Thanks. Story 1. Pompeii. What a bunch of stiffs. Story 2. Mobile, Alabama. There was a palpable aura of anger and resentment in that town that I'll never forget. Story 4. Egyptians. Here we go again. Story 5. Mos Eisley. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Story 6. Manila 1. Traffic 2. Pollution 3. Poverty. Story 7. Dallas. Endless subdivisions and strip malls and megachurches. And the name Metroplex tells you all you need to know about its charm. Story 8. Las Vegas, Nevada. The crowds, the noise, and the general debauchery were just too much for me. Story 9. Los Angeles. I have been to many cities throughout the US, and if I want to leave them I just drive like 15 to 30 minutes to the outskirts. You can't do that in LA. Depending where you are, it can take 2 to 3 hours to get away from the sprawling concrete jungle of shit. Story 10. Atlantic City, NJ, if I can help it. Story 11. I don't need to go back to Miami, or at least to South Beach. My husband and I went last year and it was a little bit of a nightmare. We always find fun together, so it was still a good vacation, but I'd rather spend money elsewhere. Story 13. Any city in Nebraska, because there's nothing to do over there, and all the stores are the most basic things you can find in other states. Story 15. Fort Wayne, Indiana. Story 16. Blackpool. Not unless I'm forced against my will. Story 17. Canberra. I saw a bit of an ugly drug and angry youth scene that I never dreamt existed in Australia. Couldn't leave the place fast enough. Story 18. I'd like to avoid going back to San Francisco if I can. It just makes me sad now. Story 19. Cairo. I've seen everything I wanted to see there, but would never return. Tourists are treated like cattle there, by those involved in the tourist trade, much to the embarrassment of the many good Egyptian people who live in the city. Story 20. Kamloops. It's dirty, and whoever designed their roadways had no idea what they were doing. Story 21. Everett, Washington. Fake lakes and meth. Story 23. I can't imagine I'll ever visit Baghdad again. The last time I was visiting I got a very frosty reception. Story 24. Gary, Indiana. Should be self-explanatory. Story 25. Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh. The resort was fine, but stepping in the city market, big aggressive vibe towards woman tourist, even when the BF is next to her. Story 27. Juarez. Walked across the border a few years back, left after 20 minutes. Hey, wanna buy some cigarettes? No thanks, I'm good. Go F yourself, gringo. Had about 4 interactions like that in 10 minutes and GTFO. Story 28. Phoenix. Been there twice and both times it was an absolute shithole. It amazes me that the area is growing so fast right now. Bradford, UK. It just doesn't have a lot going for it, unfortunately. The sort of place where when people find out you are from out of town, they ask what you are doing there. But not in a sort of cheerio, what are you here for? Way, but seriously, why have you chosen to come here? Way. Story 30. Memphis. Too many homeless people harassing me. Story 31. Houston. Too hot, too flat, and not much to do. Story 33. Miami. I know a lot of people love it there, but it is just not my scene. Walking along the strip to find a place for a meal was so unpleasant. It was crowded, overpriced, and very pushy salespeople. Story 35. Venice looks pretty in photographs, but that's because they don't properly convey the fact that the canals are open sewers, and have been for centuries. You can't get away from the smell. It's also expensive as hell. Story 37. Not a city but a state. Kentucky. I have never seen so much poverty. Story 38. New Orleans. For fun at least. I've had to go there a lot for work and witnessed the following. On Bourbon Street, I saw 2 guys get into a scuffle, then one pull a gun and aim it at his head. On Poydras Street, as we were pulling out of a parking area, a woman dropped true and started shitting in front of us next to the Superdome. As a crowds of people were pouring into the stadium, a guy pulled his peeper out and started pissing aim towards the crowd but not in proximity. In French Quarters, a woman pulled her car in front of us and began beating a man, yelling he'd be going back jail. Place is out of control. Story 40. Ashgabat. Glad I went, but creepy. Total authoritarian dear leader surveillance state. Basically can't leave the hotel unless escorted. Bad food. Utterly fascinating, but can totally scratch it off my list of been there, done that. Story 41. Can Reddit be a city? I'm slowly realizing this platform is toxic for my health. Story 42, Cairo. I truly dislike Egypt now and countries like that. Story 43, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I just don't really see the point of Oklahoma. Story 44, Miami. The beaches aren't worth the traffic and the hotels, restaurants, bars are astonishingly pretentious, expensive for how mediocre most of them are. I'm also perfectly content to never go to Venice again. I figured that looping it into a weekday work trip and being there in April would mean fewer cruise ship tourists. I was very wrong. It is almost as though you shouldn't even bother going out during the day. I was only able to walk unimpeded during the evening hours. Story 46, Jeddah. I have never been to a more disgusting place, and I've spent a lot of time in the slums of Cairo and Delhi. Story 48, Los Angeles. I grew up around there. No need to see the traffic, trash, crime and grime in my life again. Story 49, Moscow, St. Petersburg. I spent many years of my life learning Russian, and have already visited Russia 3 times. I was last there in 2012, when relations between the US and Russia were already beginning to sour again. For one, I don't see a future where Russia, even a post-Putin one, will ever again be safe for an American to travel to. Would rather visit Kiev, spend tourism dollars in Ukraine, and help it to rebuild. Both countries have suffered long from the corruption endemic to the Soviet system and long predating it in the Tsarist era, but Ukraine is actively trying to modernize and become truly culturally and politically independent. Russia itself has let its best human capital and material assets flee. Those left behind have been cowed into complacency and blindness. The old myth that Russia needs strong leadership reinforces the idea internally that the people are weak, and, with half the male population dead drunk by noon, it's hard to see a way out for them. Story 51, Rome. Super duper crowded. I can now say I've been there and seen that but have no desire to ever do any of it again. Story 52, Baltimore. Lived there for a year and it's the only time I've had my home broken into. And that was 20 years ago. It's a lower-class, blue-collar city that's filthy and crime-infested. Dangerous living. Story 53, Austin, TX. Went some years ago to experience the city and nightlife. I'm a pretty outgoing and friendly guy. I couldn't get anyone to give me the time of day while I was there. I spent the better part of a week going to bars, coffee shops, shows, social events, etc. People would just turn away from me when I said hello or attempted to strike up a conversation. One of the least hospitable, friendly places I've been in my life. 0 tenths would not recommend. Story 55, probably San Francisco. Whole place smells like piss. Story 56, Los Angeles is the most overrated place I've been in my life. The architecture didn't impress me. Hollywood sucks. The beaches are whatever. If you like to drink and smoke, that's all there really is. I'd only go there if I'm leaving from the airport. Story 59, Portland, OR. The statutes of limitations are all up, but I'm afraid I'll get my ass kicked or worse if the wrong person recognizes me. Story 60, Salt Lake City, Utah. What a gross city and even more gross lake. Story 61, Rome. I don't feel like coming to terms with my mortality every time I cross a street or even walk on a sidewalk. Story 63, Pigeon Forge, TN. It is where white trash go visit with other white trash. Story 64, Rome. Barely got out there after being stuck for a month. They have these weird roads that all lead to the same place. Story 65, so I'm currently in the process of moving out of a small town where everyone has treated me like trash because I wasn't born there. As soon as I'm fully moved, I'm never going back. Story 66, Cairo, Egypt. It was on my bucket list to visit the museum. I am glad I have been but would never go back. The roads are a nightmare. People trying to scam you left, right and center. Dead animals everywhere. Rubbish everywhere. The Nile is full of rubbish. Animal cruelty on show for visitors to see at every turn. It was awful. Story 68, Los Angeles. Dirty, crowded, overpriced, not exciting. Story 69, Asterisk Las Vegas Asterisk. I've been everywhere from NYC to Seattle and everywhere in between Nashville, Dallas, Milwaukee, Boston, Portland, SLC, Missoula, you name it, I've probably been there. All of these places had a positive impact, whether it was local cuisine, the arts, wilderness areas, the people, etc. But Vegas is the only place I'd qualify as having absolutely *0 redeeming qualities, an absolute, festering shithole, plagued with gambling degenerates, scammers, psycho bums, overpriced asterisk, everything asterisk and ungodly heat. I've walked alone in the streets of NYC at night and felt totally safe in comparison to strolling the Vegas Strip in broad daylight. And it just attracts the worst people. But hey, at least we got Martin Scorsese's asterisk casino asterisk out of it.